Okay, well, I'm here today with Mark Abbo Norvall, Corporal Mark Abbo Norvall. I believe he rose to the stratospheric rank of corporal
Right at the very end, yes.
in the Grey Scouts. And Mark, yeah, thank you so much for being patient with me and taking the time to get this interview down. We've had a couple of false starts due to my health problems, but uh, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the Grey Scouts?
Will do, John. Well, born in Bulawayo in 1960.
Okay.
So third generation Rhodesian, still Southern Rhodesian then. My birth certificate still says Southern Rhodesia. Grew up in Matabeleland, around the Norvall, Umguza areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a real little bush brat. I could speak Ndebele before I could speak English, much to my mother's horror. And and anyway, yeah, went through junior school, usual stuff. Went to a couple of different junior schools, Hillside being the main one, and as a boarder, and then ended up at Plumtree, which is where my dad and various cousins and uncles, etc., had been. So I was packed off to Plumtree on the train with my big steel trunk. And
yeah. I remember that.
and off we went. So as Jeremy Strong said in one of his interviews, he said, "Plumtree School, that's a place where they had bullying down to a fine art." were Jeremy Strong's words. And I will echo those. You were pretty tough if you survived the first 2 years at Plumtree. And that's where I earned the nickname. When I was a new boy at Plumtree, one of the seniors said, "Look at this little black bastard. He just disappears into the bush. He's like a bloody Abbo." And that was it. So that was it. And so I became known as Abbo from then on. And there are still people that only know me as Abbo Norvall.
What house were you in?
I was in Gaul.
Okay.
Yeah, Gaul House. Yep. And our housemaster was Neil Todd. He knows.
Of course, yeah. I remember he had beautiful daughters. Do you remember the
Yeah,
Todd
yeah, absolutely. But nobody was game enough to go near them, mate. You get a few bloody hidings from him with the cane, and man alive, you perked up when he hit you, eh?
yeah. I remember, at the swimming pool they had a trampoline, and the Todd daughters used to, the Todd girls used to hang out at the trampoline, and I was in Grey House, but I was there a few years before you, and they were, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's one of my memories of our high school was the pretty Todd daughters.
Yeah. And anyway, I left Plumtree and had a few months to spare between going in for national service and leaving school. And so I went and worked for my grandfather out at Umguza for a few months for the princely sum of $70 a month. And yeah, and that was where I had my first, down in that part of the world in the early 70s, the war didn't really affect too many people. They'd come in around the Cholocho and, through Wanky and Det and Kamativi and places like that. But closer to Bulawayo, they sort of hadn't done a hell of a lot. And but my first run-in with was while I was working with Grandpa, and I was 17 at the time, and I was out hunting kudu, and I spotted these blokes, 4 of them, walking along with AKs, and I was on top of a koppie, a hill, and using my bloody binoculars to spot kudu, so I could bloody sneak up on the buggers. And anyway, I spotted these 4 blokes with AKs, and so I jacked up the old 303 sight, and I thought, right, you bastards, and I got one.
What? Really? Gosh.
And the other 3 legged it, eh? They were legging it. The old 303 dust kicking up around their heels.
Goodness me.
And anyway, I bloody I legged back home and back to Grandpa's, and we bloody called the cops, and the next thing there was PAR 2 and all sorts of people, SB and all sorts of people out there. And yeah, they were thoroughly amazed. But anyway, then it came time for call up, and off I went, and ended up bloody sticking my hand up for the greys. Got in there, and I won't say too much about the training. Clive Midlane and Alan have touched on that pretty well. But I got in there, and some Major Van Heerden knew who I was, and he looked at me and said, "Yeah, you Wendy Pryor's bloody nephew, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Well, you're going to have the worst bloody horse in the fucking squadron," he goes. And I got this horse that very few people had ever been able to ride, called Clouseau. Anyway, Clouseau got tamed one day with a flash hider between the ears when his brakes didn't work. And his brakes worked very well after that. But yeah, I mean, you know, and I suppose one of the reasons I wanted to do this was that big contact up at Chisumbanje, where we lost Willie and Kufa, and Pete and Ian were wounded. It was at a time where 2 Troop was, well, Grey Scouts were pulling out of Vic Falls. We'd been there for a long time, and we'd been moved down to the southeast. We were going to do Nuanetsi with one of the troops, and up Tanganda area, Chisumbanje area with the other one. And so while that move was happening and our replacements were still sort of coming in, I think it was one of the Rhodesia regiment mobs that was going to come in. I think it was 4RR. My cousin Nigel Norvall, who was the major in the RR, he was their CO as they came in. That day that this happened was the last day that Grey Scouts were in the Falls. And we had, normally there'd be 2 sections out. So between 8 and 10 blokes and horses out on the drag, ready to react. And we had 4 that day. And we hit that spore, and Willie said, "Right, we get everybody. Yeah, the farrier, the cook, everybody who could carry a weapon was stuck into that little section." Off we went on this bloody spore, and we were at a canter on the spore. It was that easy that, you know, we were at a slow canter, just following that spore. We'd probably been on spore for, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and we started getting close. And they started offloading kit. You know, you'd come through a bunch of trees, and there was bloody kit bags and shit tossed on the ground, or thrown into bush, you know. But because we were on horseback, you could see it. So, you know, being on horseback is an advantage. You can see better, but you can also be seen better. So we used to get ambushed a lot more than blokes on foot, you know, because we stuck out. And that was one of the reasons we painted those horses like a Zorse, we called them, with the zebra stripes. Because the old didn't like that, eh? They hung on opening fire when they saw these Makiwa riding bloody zebras. They didn't. Anyway, they back onto the follow-up that led to Chisumbanje. We were getting closer and closer. And we went in, we got to Chisumbanje, and they crossed it, And like the spoor was, I don't know, 20 or 30 meters wide. Just the grass just flattened like a big herd of elephants had been through.
Where is Chamunodzi Flay? What
Chisumbanje Flay is southwest of Vic Falls. So the drag used to run from the minefield near the airport, running west to the Botswana border. Basically, it was a wide strip that every morning they'd grade it with tire graders,
right?
So that any new tracks were picked up the next day, and then every morning, so they'd do that in the evening, and then in the morning we'd come through and pick up tracks and follow them up. And anything that tried to get around it either ended up in Botswana or in the Vic Falls minefield. So that was the drag. And Chamunodzi Flay basically ran from, it was southwest through to sort of towards the northeast direction, and it was a big wide flay with a little stream in the middle, which was at the time a dry stream bed, riverbed. So, but it used to fill up with water and stuff during the rainy season. Right. And so this was September, and so it hadn't started raining yet. It was pretty dry, and they'd crossed the flay. The flay was about 700, 800, 900 meters wide, with Mapani and the usual bloody Vic Falls scrub and timber either side of it. And so we went across the flay, and once they hit the cover on the other side of the flay, they bombshelled. They bombshelled heading left, so going east-southeast. They just spread out to a very, sort of fairly big area. And so we followed more or less the centre of the tracks, and Willie and Kufu were sort of pretty much in the middle. Kufu was on Willie's right, and then it was myself and Bud, and then on the other side we had Pete and Ian and one of the farriers and Bill Thurman, and we were just sweeping. We'd got into extended line by then, and we were just sweeping, going along the edge of the flay, still on horseback. And then the shooting started. So we debussed and started moving through. There were terrorists everywhere. They were everywhere. They were just, it turned out later there were over 100 of them. And it was, a huge group, and like this 10 or 11 of us. And that would have been probably about, I don't know, 10:30 in the morning that we hit them. And this continued until dark. And in fact, after dark, we had another bit of a skirmish. And wherever you looked, John, and they'd back off, they'd take off, and then they'd bloody lay down positions again. And then you'd get up on them and you'd hear the whistles starting. They had whistles, and they were doing the bloody sort of buddy type movement stuff. You'd hear one blast, a whole bunch of them would come, and you'd bloody start shooting, and then two blasts, and that lot would go down, and the next lot would come forward.
Sounds like Zipper, right?
Yeah, they were Zipper, yes.
Because Zipper were much better trained than Zanla. Zanla never used whistles and that type of thing.
Yeah. These guys were unreal. And we kept moving. It was just wherever you looked, there was an enemy to shoot at. It was just whoever was hammering you the hardest was your next target. I ended up turfing my weapon and picking up an RPD, and finished off with an RPD because my ammo was gone, and a few other guys ended up with AKs, and it was. I ended up taking that RPD home after the war,
I was just thinking, if the contact lasted that long, you must have run out of ammo.
We had a few resupplies. Willie had called in for air support, and they only had one chopper and one Lynx. That was our fire force. And so they had a K car. There were no G cars. There were no troops to go in a G car. So no G cars, just a K car with a 20 mil and a Lynx. And they both dropped resupplies. I don't know who flew that Lynx or that helicopter. The helicopter pilot was a redhead bloke. He was the blood nut. And he could fly that helicopter in reverse. He was unreal.
No doubt we'll find out in the comments who I'm sure the Blue Jobs will know who the pilot was.
They'll know who it was. And they were incredible. They were absolutely incredible. They'd come in and just bloody, put down some fire. That links with those Frantams, man, he was good. He could chuck those bloody drums of shit, right where you needed them. And geez, they'd go up. But yeah, it just went on and on and on and on. And like they were pulling guys back and pushing fresh ones forward. And we just had to keep going. Ian got wounded first, so that put one out. So straight away, that's 10% gone. And then Willie got hit. That would have been about 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then Kufa ran in to try and drag Willie out. And because they'd figured out by then who Willie was. He was yelling at people and, edging the guys on. And yeah, bloody Kufa, he got hit trying to pull Willie out. Sorry. And then Pete Cabell, who he had the TR-48 on his back for half the contact. That little bugger, and he's like a stick insect. And eventually he stashed it. And he went in to try and help Willie and Kufa. And we were just putting down covering fire right now, just pushing in like this. And
Willie was a lieutenant, right?
Yes. Yeah, Willie Loxton. And yeah, we pushed him back. That was the only way we could recover him. But when we knew those two guys are down and Pete had been hit, we all pulled in and just sent it on and just blasted a hole through the middle of them, basically, and divided them into two groups. And at that time, the helicopter had to go off to get fuel because they don't fly for long, those bloody things, eh? But the Lynx, man, he was good, that bloke. With those Brownings in that Lynx, he could shoot that boy. Yeah, he was good. He was good. And yeah, without those two buggers, we would have been gone, a lot of us. So yeah, and then it got dark. In the meantime, Ian had been picked up and Kazovac by the helicopter when he needed to go on one of his fuel runs. He did a Kazovac at the same time, and then he did the same with Pete on the next load of fuel. I think he went through 4 or 5 tanks of juice, maybe 6. I don't know how many. And then we carried Willie.
Is Ian Corporal Kufa?
No. Ian Randall. Okay. He was one of the guys that was wounded. Ian and Pete were wounded. Kufa was the corporal that was killed. Kufa Buku. Right. He was our tracker. Ex-4RR, he was trained by Sparrows down in the southeast. He was a bloody good soldier, eh? He used to go with a bloody Zulu 42 on the end of his. That was his first shot. Open a contact with the Zulu 42 every time. But yeah, and then we carried Willie Loxton and Kufa into a central spot. And we bivvied up around them, around the outside of a big baobab tree that was burning from Frantam hit. And that night we were all just bloody trying to get a bit of rest and a bit of kit, And next thing we heard them coming back. And I heard one of them saying, Sindivele, let's go over there by the fire. We'll go and sit by the fire. And I knew straight away they were talking about the burning tree behind us. So we pulled a bunch of guys into a group and we laid an ambush. And they walked right into it, eh? And we opened fire and bloody, they took off and bloody, we hit a couple more. But that night was the best bloody shot with a heavy barrel FN I've ever seen anybody make. Bill, who was an Aussie, well, still is, lives in Western Australia, down the southern end of Western Australia. He used to carry a heavy barreled FN, and he could shoot that boy. I think he grew up hungry. He used to shoot rabbits to feed himself as a kid. He could shoot, hey. And he stood up with that heavy barreled FN. There was one bloke running away down the fly with a mortar base plate on his back, and it was going clonk, 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 clonk. So all you could hear was this mortar base plate clanking as the bloke ran. And Bill dropped him one shot. And he dropped and started yodeling and carrying on anyway. The Lions came and finished him off that night. Took him about 2 hours. He didn't shut up until the Lions arrived. But yeah, the next morning, the chopper came in, and by that stage, they'd got some 4RR blokes to come in, and 4RR actually picked the score up from there and continued the follow up. But after that, the CTs bloody bombshelled and went in all different directions, and they never really had much luck after that. And that's why that drag system up at the falls was so good, because you caught them before they bombshelled, while they were still in groups. But, we were used to groups of 20 was a big group, and next thing it was 100. Yeah, that was one hell of a day. So, yeah, that was the thing that really made me, want to talk to you and just put that down on record. One of those days that will live forever in me and the other boys who were there.
Yeah.
From there we moved to the Southeastern, and again, we always seem to find our fair share of trouble and terrorists, and down in the southeast there we had a loot there by the name of Canvas Tennant, and he stuck a pistol in his mouth and did himself one night. Just couldn't hack it, the poor bugger. And that was less than 2 weeks after William Kufa lost it at Chisumbanje. He was the one troop loot. But yeah, it was after that, it was sort of carry on as per normal as we did, just
southeast. That would be what, Gonarazu kind of area, or
down towards Gono's, Nuanetsi. I think it was Nuanetsi Ranch to start with, and then we moved to Chisumbanje, and we did a fair bit up there, and did a few bloody cross-border raids up that way. I remember we stole a Russian Jeep, Russian four-wheel drive thing, and drove it back to Rhodesia. And we had to got to the Tangana River, and we had to get it over the river, and they're all going, oh no, well, geez, we'll never get up that riverbank. I said, give it here. I grew up taking Land Rovers and Land Cruisers up banks like that. Whoop, up she went. And and we actually got on that one. We got chased by Frelimo. We hadn't got through the bloody minefield. The engineers had come in and cleared a path for us through the minefield, and we were still getting through the minefield, and they were opening up on us with RPGs and whatnot from the other side. The RPGs were self-destructing over the top of us. Because what did they go? They'd go 900 meters or something, and then they'd just blow up. They had a self-destruct limit on them. Yeah, so there was always plenty of fun to be had in there. But some of the funny things that happened in Scouts, in Grey Scouts, though, the old TR-48 radio is a thing that many of us carried and hated until we needed it. Yeah. And those bloody batteries and
batteries.
And anyway, in Grey Scouts, you'd put it on your back and you'd sit low, because you'd roll your sleeping bag up on the back of your saddle, and then you'd sit down like that. You'd hunch down, and then the weight of the radio would sit on the sleeping bag, and then the straps would come off your shoulders. And they, over the years with sweat and whatnot, they got hard, so they just sit there. But one bloke one day, he was sitting like that, and cantering along a game path, and I'll leave the names out of this one, but the ellies used to break branches off, along the game, and there was this bit sticking out of a mapani tree, and it went under the strap of the TR-48 and plucked him off his horse and left him hanging in the tree. So And the next thing, his horse came past riderless, so he caught the horse, went back, and here he was hanging in the tree, swearing at us, hey, get me down, you bastards. And we were just laughing. I just let him hang there for a bit. So yeah, it's and I remember another time, another bloke in the Gorma was over on the Southeastern. We're going up a steep hill, and generally up the steep hills, we'd get off the horses. You know, everybody'd get off the horse and you'd walk up because your saddle would slide back. And this bloke had the bloody radio on his back, and he thought, no, bugger this, I'm not getting off. Not with this, I'm not walking up here with his radio. Anyway, his reins were getting shorter and shorter, and eventually he thought he'd better check to see how much horse he had left behind him, and he put his hand behind him, and over he went. And the horse just looked back at him, stepped out of the girth, and carried on up the hill, and he was lying now with the weight of the radio holding him down the hill. Yeah. And anyway, then from Chisumbanje area, we went then up to Sonoya when the first election took place. We were put up to Sonoya. When the ceasefire happened, life got a bit interesting for me because somehow Don Kenny, Sergeant Major Kenny, I'll tell you what, he ran A Squadron A. It didn't matter which captain or whoever was in name running A Squadron, they had no idea. Oh, Don Kenny used to run it. And anyway, Don had figured out that I could speak Ndebele really well. And when the ceasefire came about, he had been talking to one of his mates, and I got a tap on the shoulder from the Don one day, and he said, right, you've got a new job. When Don Kenny said you got a new job, you had a new job. There was no bloody discussion to be had. I was put into AP Romeo as a member of the Zimbabwe Rhodesian Army Integration Unit. I was seconded from Grey Scouts and attached to this new unit and stuck into AP Romeo. And John, I will never forget when we arrived at the gate of AP Romeo, which is all Zipra, and they had a boom made up out of Mapani trees and stuff. And we pulled up. We had a BMAT bloke and a peacekeeping bloke, myself, and somebody else, can't remember who it was. And we were allowed to take our weapons. And we had a TR-48, well, a new one, a B-22, which is a little bit lighter than the old 48. It had a better battery to send in daily sit-reps. It was about maybe 400 to 600 metres from the gate to where they had this little office. It used to be a store once upon a time. That had become the office for this assembly point. And the Zipra officers, commandants, or whatever they call themselves, can't remember now, were in there. And I remember walking in there. Now, at that point in time, there were between 1,500 and 2,000 bods in there. And I didn't feel my feet touch the floor that whole 500 metres, John. It was like I was just gliding. I don't remember actually walking it. You know, it was 1 minute you were there and you just went. It was like automatic pilot, eh? All these CTs looking at you, all sort of coming around like this, you know. And anyway, we walked in there and it took a few days to sort of, didn't take too long. It was quicker than I thought for me to make comms with these Zipper blokes. There was a guy in there called Funwell Duby. Yeah, he was sort of 2IC. He and another bloke called Sibanda, Elliot Sibanda. And Elliot told me that once upon a time he worked with a Skuzapo, and I think he was captured somewhere. I don't know where, but yeah, I ended up working with those guys for, geez, John, I wasn't even there when I was in the AP when the election results came out. I'd been told that there could be a hit, that there was a planned hit, and there was going to be a bloody call on the B-22. There was code, was given a code. If you told this, be out within X hours.
Operation Courts, yeah. Operation Courts, I think it was.
Yeah. And anyway, that never came. Zipra were not happy when Mugabe won. And we had one of the boss men of BMAT, a guy by the name of Guy Sheridan, Lieutenant Colonel. And he had actually been the military advisor to the Shah of Iran before the Shah was deposed. He had some connections, that boy. He recognised the fact that if Zipra were not really well catered to, there was going to be big shit in the land. He was a pretty smart bloke, Guy. He started put together a bit of a team, and we started moving between. There was another AP over at Cholocho, another one at Bala. Those are the three big ones. Romeo and Sonoya. I think it was Mike at Guy. I can't remember what the one at Bala was. But we would go from one to the other, trying to keep these guys on sides and sign them up to come into the BMAT run officers course at the School of Inf. But the more we did that, the more we realised that these guys, and they'd keep disappearing. And we soon had knowledge that that they were going back into Botswana, and there was into the effect that there was a South African unit arming and backing them to come back in and destabilise Mugabe. That was, before 1981. In later years, I realised that was true at the time. At the time, I really didn't want to believe it, and I took it with a half a bucket of salt, But I did that right through until March of 81. Of 81. March, April of 81. So nearly a year after. By that time, I'd signed up regular army. And I never officially demobbed, John.
Okay.
Guy Sheridan, when I got first put into AP Romeo, that's when I got made a corporal. When Don Kenny came and he said, right, you got a new job. You're getting 2 stripes on your shoulder, whether you like it or not, because I turned him down before. He said, you're the only little prick that's ever said no to me and got away with it. He said, that's not going to happen twice. And anyway, from then they actually promoted me a couple more times, but by March 81, I was enough, I really had enough of it. I could see these Zipper blokes just disappearing back into the bush every time you visited an AP. And I'd become based basically at the Bulawayo Club, was our base of operations. We had rooms at the Bulawayo Club. So it was pretty comfortable as far as that went. And working with the likes of Guy Sheridan was just an absolute pleasure. But it was Elliot Sibanda who said to me, he said, so long as there's a Shawnee in power, there's going to be shit in Matabeleland. And he was right. He was right. But I never officially demobbed. I just, Bill Morrison took over in Grey Scouts. He was ex-armoured cars, and it continued quite well into the 80s. I think it's fallen apart now, but it continued on in the Zimbabwe army for quite a while. in that time, I met a couple of the blokes who were in that big Chambonda flag contact. They told me that they reckon there must have been 50 Rhodesians, at least. I said, no, it was not even 12.
Goodness me. Mentioning Chisumbanje brings back a lot of childhood memories for me.
Yes.
It's not really relevant to your story, but when I left school, my first job I got was as a driver for the Chipinga cheese factory, and
Okay.
I used to go down to the Sabi River irrigation scheme.
Yes.
From Chipinga through the two baobabs, the famous two baobabs.
Yes. Yes.
And deliver milk and cheese and whatever, butter and everything. And then we'd go on the road towards Chisumbanje, and there was a hot spring, and we used to buy a couple of quarts of cold beer and lie in the hot spring there. This must have been the early 70s.
Yes.
And then my dad decided that we were going to do a fishing trip towards Chisumbanje, and we went all the way down that road towards Chisumbanje, and then just before we got to the Sabi River, there's a little road turning left, and you go on this road all the way to the Mozambique border. You go through two tsetse-fly control gates.
Yes.
And then there's a little fishing camp at the Chiravira Gorge, which is where the Sabi River drops into Mozambique.
Yep.
And there's the whole river narrows to about a 10-foot wide gorge, and goes into this massive pool.
Yep.
And in the dry season, the whole Sabi River dries up, but there's these big pools with a 300-foot cliff on either side.
Yep.
And these cliffs go down probably about 10 kilometers downstream. And there's a couple of pools, and these pools are 1 or 2 kilometers long, and all the crocodiles and hippo and fish actually congregate in these two big pools. And there must have been hundreds of crocs and hundreds of hippo. And you could see the massive, like 6-foot, 10-foot long vundu. And there was great tiger fishing, in the, anyway, we used to stay in this fishing camp and then go down into the gorge in the morning to get water and brush our teeth, and I had a little 6.5 Bruno, which was like with a Mauser action, and I used to shoot
6.5 by 55.
Yeah, 6.5 by 57.
57. Okay, good weapon.
I used to shoot baboons with that thing for pocket money, and one day the baboons came down the cliff to come and get water in the heat of the day, and I shot this one baboon, and he got stuck on the side of the cliff, and he was wounded, but he wasn't dead. And I needed, I used to get 2 and 6 for each baboon tail if I presented it to the district commissioner. He used to, because they were regarded as vermin, you see, so you would get a reward. So I needed to get this baboon tail, and if he fell into the water, then the crocs would have just eaten him. So it was a kind of a blessing that he got stuck on the cliff, and so I had to cross the river, which I sort of did by hopping over rocks and everything, and then I managed to get to the other side, and I started climbing this cliff. And as I was climbing along the edge of this cliff, realizing that if I fell in, I would get eaten by crocodiles. I found these huge, big metal rings. They were like this size. That were driven into the side of the cliff. And anyway, cut a long story short, I eventually managed to recover the baboon. I had to dispatch it with my Bowie knife. And I got the tail. But afterwards, I was speaking to some historians who said that in the rainy season, the Sabi River, which is the Sabi River in Rhodesia, but it becomes the Sabi River in Mozambique,
right. Yes.
is navigable for Arab dhows. And
Okay.
that apparently the Arab dhows used to go up the Sabi River, and these big metal rings that I found driven into the side of the cliff were mooring points where they used to moor their dhows in these pools.
Bloody hell.
And then, during the dry season, the elephant come up this gorge to these pools to get water, and then you could sit on the cliffs and shoot the elephant without any danger. And they would fill up their dhows with ivory, and get whatever slaves they could get, and then with the white gold and the black gold, they would then, with the next rains, they would float down the Sabi back into the sea and then go up to Zanzibar and sell their ivory and sell their slaves. And apparently I had discovered these mooring points in the side of the cliff while I was baboon hunting. But yeah, I know that area very, very well, having a lot of childhood memories in the of the Chisumbanje area, But yeah, that was the life of Rhodesian schoolboys, old Plumtree boys.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so when I left the army, I got hold of Bill Morrison. I said, "You better cross my name off the books." And he said, "Shit, I wondered where you were." He said, "You were still on the books and you never demobbed. And I thought I had another member somewhere. Where have you been?" So I told him, "You have no idea. None. So I walked out with a bloody arms cache, hey, John. FN G3, one of the good G3s with all the good mags, bloody ammo, RPD, claymores.
Did you manage to get it out of the country?
No. It's all still there. It's in an arms cache up north of Penelonga.
Okay, I was going to say I have an arms cache as well, which I buried. I was in a duplex flat in 2nd Street Extension, near where the University of Rhodesia was. And in the garden there, about a meter under the earth, there's an arms cache there. I had an RPG-7 rocket, a few rockets, and a rocket launcher, and a whole lot of those round hand grenades. I don't know. They were Chinese hand grenades, so I don't know whether they had a 4 to 5 second fuse or whether they were instant. So I never pulled a pin on any of them in case the bloody thing went off. But some of them were small. They were small little things. And oh my word, I had a bunch of stuff. I had plastic explosive and detonators and Cortex so there's an arms cache there. If ever I need to go back there and rearm,
I got a similar one.
Crumbs, the stories that we have.
Then I went to South Africa after that, and to uni in South Africa, and then came back to Zim. And by then it was starting to hot up dissident-wise in Matabeleland. And there were quite a lot of people taken out around Matland during that time. The Loxton family, which is Willie's cousins, an aunt and uncle, who were also Plumtree. Gary Loxton was at Plumtree. He would have been 2 years behind you. So he was Willie Loxton's cousin.
Right.
And
I remember the Loxtons,
Yes. So they were taken out by dissidents. The McDonalds and various people were taken out. And then my old man got taken out in 87.
Oh, really?
That Washington Post article that I sent you on email, if you have a look.
Yes.
Photos and stuff. Yeah, that's what that was about. And I'd actually forgotten that article ever got done. And a bloke here in Australia who was a fertilizer supplier had lost my they're a fertilizer manufacturer in Australia, and he'd lost my phone number. So he thought he'd Google me. And anyway, when he eventually got onto me, he said, "Remind me never to piss you off." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, I found this bloody article about you online. I'll send you a link." And that was the article.
Yeah.
So that article was done in 1988. The old man was killed in 87, ambushed on the farm. Yeah, so it got pretty hot for Matabeleland until they had their unity accord. Then it settled down again. But that was when I discovered that actually, can't remember which reaction we went on. There was Martin Olds, myself, Woody York, one of the mans, I can't remember which man it was, and some of the Black Boots boys. There were a few still old mob Black Boot boys there, and they came with us. Yeah, we actually managed to take a few out, and it was then that when we were going through their kit, a lot of it was South African, hey, John. Everything, all their food, SA Army, the whole lot.
Goodness me, that's strange.
And so, yeah, it was a bit of an eye-opener.
Martin Olds was at Plumtree School with me.
Yes.
We were classmates in Grey House. He was in Grey House as well.
Yep, and Martin was also in B Squadron in Grey Scouts.
Yeah.
So he's also an ex-Grey Scout.
So those farm murders and everything, there was a whole lot of farm murders that took place in the 80s. Is that right?
Yes.
Whereabouts was your farm then? Where your dad was murdered?
Yeah, Norvall. So between Norvall and Chalocho.
Okay, so it wasn't
you
near...
go out on the Falls Road and you turn west off the Falls Road onto the Nyama Road, onto the Chalocho Road.
Okay.
And so about, I suppose, 200 k's south of Wanky.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. You never met the Bordens, did you? They had a farm near in Caesar.
Yeah, Barry. Yeah.
Guy Borden and Kit and Barry. Yeah.
Yep.
Gosh.
But yeah, there were a lot of farm murders in that area because it was one of the closest commercial farming areas to Botswana, and that's where they were hanging out.
Yeah. So, my good lady has just given me a piece of watermelon.
It's spoiled, John. Yep.
Is that it?
I'd say so. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your input, and sorry for the loss of your friends. I can tell it still affects you deeply. And it's strange how these things live with us, eh?
It is.
I had two very good friends in RLI who were both taken out, Harry File and Matt Lamb. And apparently when I went in for
Eastern Highlands as well, wasn't he? He was a bloody Eastern boy.
Matt Lamb was a Canadian.
Oh, okay, different family. Yep.
Harry File was his father was a brigadier general or something in the South African Army, and he was busy doing a Bachelor of Military degree. And his father said to him, "I think you should go up to Rhodesia, and if you're going to have a military career, then you need to have some combat experience, you know." So he went and signed up with the RLI. I think he was an intake. I think it was intake 139. I was intake 140, and so he was a little bit senior to me. But we both were promoted to Lance Corporal at the same time.
Yes.
My promotion was subject to me signing on regular, which I never did. But Harry was already a regular, and I think on his very first very first op as a stick leader with the A63 radio, the chopper dropped them. They were supposed to do an ambush. They'd had some int that the terrorists were using this dry riverbed as a route. It probably was somewhere in the Matoko area. And no, what was it called again? Chisumbanje Keep. I don't know if that rings a bell. Chisumbanje Keep. Yeah. Anyway, but they were a little bit lazy in the sense that the chopper dropped them quite close to where they were going to lay the ambush towards Lost Light. So they didn't walk in from a long distance. And the terrorists apparently heard the chopper and then got them visual. Got them visual. And there were terrorists in the dry riverbed, and while they were setting up the ambush with still connecting the claymores and everything, the terrorists ambushed them basically, and it started with them throwing a bunch of these stick grenades at them, and in the last light, these stick grenades make like a fizzing sound. They like sparklers, you know.
Yep.
And all four of them went down, took cover, and these grenades went off. But only three of them got back up and started returning fire. And then Martin Geldnys, who was there, who was a good friend of mine, said to me, he was wondering, where's Harry? I don't see Harry. Anyway, they threw some more stick grenades. So they took cover again. And when he took cover the second time, he landed in a pool of blood, which was Harry's blood. And what had happened was a little bit of shrapnel. Honestly, the size of a match head had just punctured his his carotid artery.
Yes.
And he just bled out very quickly. Yeah. And Martin said for the rest of his life he has nightmares about diving into a pool of Harry's blood, and then looking to the side and seeing Harry, bleeding out.
It's something else being there and witnessing your mates go down.
Yeah.
That is just a very, very bloody harsh thing, really, really harsh.
Yeah. I remember when Log Ensslin, who was Harry's sergeant, was telling the story, because Harry was a wonderful guy. He was a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, good-looking, athletic sort of guy who everybody liked him. He was, real Afrikaner, didn't speak English very well, very respectful and well brought up, likable Afrikaans boy, a real quality soldier, a quality human being. I just clicked with him immediately. I just, was attracted to him because he was such an upright, nice guy, and somehow his death really affected me, in a way that's hard to just never forget it, basically. But Abbo, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much.
And I'll edit this and send you a link.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, John.
All right, brother. Cheers, man.
Mate.
I'm going to stop recording now.